Robert Lewandowski could soon trade the glamour of La Liga for a fresh challenge in Serie A, while Liverpool are reportedly preparing to spend a staggering €80 million on a new arrival. The big question is whether that enormous investment would truly solve their growing problems. Meanwhile, Chelsea appeared to have identified both their next manager and Anthony Gordon's future destination. There is plenty to unpack in today's transfer drama. Barcelona, as always, find themselves trapped in another cycle of financial chaos disguised as long-term planning. Reports from Diario Sport suggest that sporting director Deco has adopted a brutally pragmatic approach. The club's priority is simple: return to La Liga's one-to-one spending rule before the end of June, no matter the cost. Only then can they realistically pursue a successor to Robert Lewandowski and reinforce the left-back position. To make that happen, Barca must quickly generate major transfer income through player sales. This has little to do with tactics or squad harmony. It is survival mode for a club still suffocating under years of financial damage. One of the biggest names now linked with a potential exit is Alejandro Balde. Once viewed as the natural heir to Jordi Alba, Balde has seen his stock fall dramatically after losing ground in competition with Joao Cancelo. Instead of being considered untouchable, he is now viewed as another valuable asset Barcelona may sacrifice to balance the books. Hovering in the background, unsurprisingly, are Manchester United. The Premier League giants have developed a reputation for spending heavily on players whose potential still outweighs their recent performances, and Balde fits that profile perfectly. At the same time, Deco is also quietly exploring a possible departure for Jules Koundé. While there has been no public push to force him out, super agent Jorge Mendes has reportedly been tasked with finding a buyer willing to pay at least €50 million. The problem for Barcelona is that the rest of Europe can see their desperation. Rival clubs know the June 30th financial deadline is approaching rapidly, and they are expected to use that pressure against Joan Laporta in negotiations. Every interested side will attempt to drive prices down as far as possible, knowing Barca need cash more than leverage. If the sales of fringe players fail to generate enough money, the club may be forced into far more painful decisions, including selling players previously considered untouchable. That is the cruel reality Barcelona now face. Before they can dream about signing the next attacking superstar, they first need to convince yesterday's heroes that their time at Camp Nou is coming to an end. Meanwhile, in Madrid, Real Madrid are undoubtedly enjoying the spectacle, watching their greatest rivals attempt to rebuild a future from the wreckage of their own financial collapse. Liverpool, on the other hand, are confronting a very different crisis. Reports suggest the club are willing to spend €80 million on Athletic Bilbao winger Nico Williams as Arne Slot searches desperately for a spark to revive his struggling project at Anfield. According to growing reports, Liverpool can no longer ignore the warning signs in their attack. Securing Champions League qualification this season has become a draining battle, creativity has vanished far too often, and the looming departure of Mohamed Salah threatens to leave an enormous void on the right wing. This is not merely about signing another winger. Liverpool are trying to prevent the beginning of a much deeper decline. Salah's eventual exit will mark the end of one of the greatest eras in the club's modern history, and replacing that level of influence is almost impossible. Without a player capable of producing moments of brilliance in difficult matches, Liverpool risks slipping away from Europe's elite and becoming another club living off memories of former success. At just 23 years old, Nico Williams represents the kind of explosive unpredictability that Slot's system has badly lacked. His season with Athletic Bilbao has not been spectacular, and his form has fluctuated more than expected, but that inconsistency may actually explain why Liverpool believe €80 million is still a realistic price. If he rediscovers his best level, his value could rise dramatically again. From a stylistic perspective, Williams looks tailor-made for the Premier League. He possesses the pace, directness, and relentless energy to terrorize defenders for an entire match. Still, there is undeniable risk involved. Liverpool would essentially be betting on their ability to revive a player whose development has stalled slightly in the Basque Country. Yet hesitation could prove fatal because several rival clubs are already monitoring the situation closely. If Liverpool delay too long, a bidding war could erupt, and in their current financial and sporting position, that is a battle they may struggle to win. For Nico Williams, the move would offer the bigger platform his talent demands. For Liverpool, it could be the signing that prevents an uncertain future from turning into a full-blown collapse. Anfield's leadership have finally been forced to confront an uncomfortable reality. Replacing a player of Mohamed Salah's stature with a bargain solution is not ambition, it is a shortcut to mediocrity. Liverpool now understand that €80 million is simply the modern entry fee for clubs trying to remain among Europe's elite. In today's market, the true danger is not overspending. The real disaster comes from getting the decision wrong and watching an entire era collapse because the club tried to save money at the worst possible moment. Chelsea, meanwhile, are staring directly at the wreckage of another chaotic season. Stamford Bridge has become a symbol of broken promises, with the club sitting 8th in the table, 10 points adrift of the top 5 and European qualification slipping away rapidly. The experimental tactical projects under Enzo Maresca and Ivan Juric-style ideas have already been discarded, leaving the board scrambling for a completely different approach. This time, Chelsea are abandoning their obsession with collecting teenagers for some imaginary long-term masterplan. Instead, they are targeting a player already hardened by Premier League football. Anthony Gordon has emerged as their priority signing, and reports suggest the club are prepared to spend as much as £80 million to secure him. According to The Athletic, the move is seen as a direct solution to Chelsea's chronic imbalance on the left wing. Unlike many of their recent signings, Gordon would not arrive as a developmental project requiring patience and protection. Chelsea reportedly view him as a ready-made, world-class performer capable of delivering immediately. His explosive pace, direct running, vertical attacking style, and relentless intensity make him an ideal weapon for a squad that has lacked consistency, structure, and urgency throughout the campaign. Bayern Munich are also monitoring the situation, but Chelsea intend to overpower the competition financially. The shift in strategy is significant. For years, the club prioritized collecting young prospects with theoretical upside while ignoring the importance of players capable of surviving the pressure and brutality of elite-level football every single week. Now they are spending another £80 million simply to repair problems created by previous spending sprees worth more than £500 million. It perfectly sums up the chaotic economics of the modern Chelsea project. Elsewhere, Robert Lewandowski's time in Barcelona appears to be reaching its inevitable conclusion. By June 30th, the relationship between club and player is expected to come to an end after negotiations reportedly hit a complete standstill. At 37 years old, Barcelona's hierarchy no longer believe they can justify paying elite wages for a player entering the final stage of his career, regardless of his legendary status. While Barcelona prepare for a major wage bill reset, Lewandowski's representatives are already shaping his next move in Italy. Reports from Tuttosport claim Juventus have submitted a serious proposal, a one-year contract worth €6 million net plus performance bonuses. It is a calculated gamble from Juventus chief executive Damian Comolli, who appears more willing to trust the experience and proven quality of a veteran striker than continue waiting for younger players to develop into reliable match winners. To make room for Lewandowski, Juventus have reportedly taken the dramatic decision to freeze contract renewal talks with Dusan Vlahovic. The club's thinking is brutally simple: they want immediate results, and Lewandowski would demand a guaranteed starting role from the moment he arrives. Barcelona's offer, by contrast, reportedly included a significant wage reduction and a diminished role as an experienced squad figure rather than an automatic starter. For a player with Lewandowski's mentality and ego, that proposal was never likely to be acceptable. He still believes he can compete at the highest level in the Champions League and has little interest in ending his career quietly in Saudi Arabia, despite the enormous money available there. For Joan Laporta, however, the situation could hardly be more beneficial financially. Losing Lewandowski on a free transfer may sound painful from a sporting perspective, but removing his enormous salary from the wage structure would finally give Barcelona breathing room after years of financial suffocation. In many ways, his departure represents more than the end of a player's chapter; it symbolizes the end of an entire era Barcelona can no longer afford to maintain. The final negotiations scheduled for May are expected to be little more than a technical exercise, focused mainly on polishing the payment structure and final details of the agreement. Once again, Pini Zahavi appears to have worked his magic, convincing another European giant that a 37-year-old striker can still deliver at the very highest level. Juventus are knowingly sacrificing long-term planning for the promise of immediate experience and leadership, even though the entire gamble could easily collapse into a tactical nightmare within a few months of the new season. For Robert Lewandowski, the decision is symbolic. Rather than accepting a reduced role in Barcelona and confronting the reality of age catching up with him, he would rather remain the central figure at a historic club like Juventus. In many ways, Zahavi has once again demonstrated his unique ability to market even the final chapter of a player's career as a glamorous new beginning. Meanwhile, Arsenal are revisiting a familiar name in their search for additional firepower on the wing. Serge Gnabry has reportedly re-emerged as a target for the North London club, but negotiations are already revealing the gap between the two sides' expectations. According to reports, Bayern Munich are demanding around €35 million, while Arsenal are only willing to go as high as €25 million. That difference in valuation reflects the growing uncertainty surrounding Gnabry's condition and long-term reliability. At 30 years old, a winger whose game relies heavily on explosiveness and acceleration becomes increasingly vulnerable when injuries begin to pile up. Despite recording 10 goals and 11 assists this season, there is a growing feeling that Gnabry has evolved from a dependable elite winger into something closer to a constant rehabilitation project. Mikel Arteta is believed to value him as experienced depth and as cover for Bukayo Saka, but Arsenal are understandably reluctant to spend premium money on a player with such a troubling injury history. The gamble is enormous. If Gnabry can rediscover his sharpness and consistency, he could become an excellent short-term solution. If not, he risks becoming one of the most expensive passengers at the Emirates Stadium. Bayern Munich, for their part, may need to accept that the ideal moment to cash in on Gnabry has already passed. His peak market value disappeared several seasons ago, and the conversation has now shifted from maximizing profit to simply finding the most respectable exit possible. The emotional storyline of a former Arsenal Academy player returning to North London may sound romantic, but beneath the surface it looks far more like a calculated attempt to secure experience quality at a discounted price from a club running out of alternatives. At Chelsea, another major managerial shift appears to be gathering momentum. Andoni Iraola is reportedly emerging as the leading candidate to take over at Stamford Bridge after enhancing his reputation dramatically with Bournemouth. With his contract situation opening the door for a move, Chelsea's ownership see an opportunity to appoint one of the Premier League's most respected tactical coaches without paying massive compensation fees. According to reports, the Spanish coach has become the preferred option to lead Chelsea out of their prolonged instability. The logic behind the move is obvious. Chelsea's hierarchy want to inject structure, discipline, and intensity into a squad overflowing with talented but inconsistent young players. Iraola's aggressive pressing system and tactical organization are viewed as the exact qualities the club have lacked despite their enormous spending spree over recent years. However, behind the appeal lies a deeply dangerous challenge. Moving from Bournemouth to Chelsea would mean stepping away from a stable environment into one of the most unforgiving dressing rooms in European football. Patience at Stamford Bridge barely exists anymore. Managers are not hired to build gradual projects, and they are expected to deliver Champions League qualification immediately while simultaneously justifying the club's financial excesses. If Iraola accepts the role, he would inherit the task of forcing an expensive, highly pampered squad to buy into relentless pressing, hard work, and tactical discipline. At the same time, Chelsea's board would almost certainly continue preparing backup plans behind the scenes, just as they always do. The reality is brutal. Stamford Bridge has become an elite-level pressure cooker capable of destroying reputations faster than most clubs sign players. At Chelsea, the distance between being hailed as a savior and being shown the exit door can be as short as one disastrous week.